You know, there's a threat growing all around us. It's in our hospitals, in our homes, and yeah, even in our cleaning supplies. But it's not a virus, and it doesn't really make the nightly news. It's what some are calling a silent pandemic, and it has been building for decades.
We all just lived through a global health crisis. So, of course, we're thinking about what's next. But what if the next disease isn't some new pathogen from the wild? What if it's an old enemy that we've accidentally been training, making it stronger than ever before? So, to really get what we're up against, you have to meet one of the newest and, frankly, most dangerous players in this invisible war. Okay, meet Candida auris. And get this, it's not a bacterium, it's a fungus. And it is a total nightmare for hospitals. It was only really identified about a decade ago, and it can be resistant to all three major classes of antifungal drugs. It's tough, it's incredibly persistent, and yeah, it's spreading.
So, one of its most effective weapons is something called a biofilm. Think of it like this. The fungus cells stick to a surface, say a catheter or a hospital bed rail. Then they start multiplying and secreting this slimy protective gunk, basically building a shield around their little colony. And that shield makes it incredibly difficult for our drugs and even our own immune systems to break through and get to them.
And the consequences of that are just devastating. In one study of an outbreak, more than a third of patients with a serious CRS infection died within a month. This isn't just some other bug. It's considered a top-tier public health threat.
So you have to be asking, how did we get here, right? How are these superbugs getting so strong? Well, the answer is surprisingly close to home.
We've all heard this part of the story before. Taking antibiotics when we don't need them, or maybe not finishing the whole prescription. It gives bacteria a chance to adapt and survive. It's a classic case of survival of the fittest, right, on a microscopic level.
But here's the twist in the story. What if our obsession with being clean, our constant use of disinfectants, is actually part of the problem? To get it, you have to understand the difference. Think of antibiotics as sniper rifles. They have a very specific single target in a germ. But the biocides in our disinfectants, they're more like shotguns. They just cause massive, widespread damage to a germ's entire structure.
Okay, so here's the crucial point. When we don't use enough disinfectant or we don't leave it on long enough, some bacteria survive. That low-dose exposure is like sending them to the gym. It triggers their defenses. They build these tiny little machines called efflux pumps that literally pump the poison back out of their cell. But here's the kicker. That same pump doesn't just work on disinfectants. It can also pump out our life-saving antibiotics. So by trying to kill them with one chemical, we are unintentionally training them to defeat our very best medicines. And this cross-resistance is creating this terrifying new reality, one that doctors and public health officials are already facing every single day. The numbers are just staggering. I mean, according to the World Health Organization, in some parts of the world, the medicines we count on to treat common infections are now useless up to 90% of the time. This is not some future problem, it's happening right now. We all remember that shock and confusion of early 2020. This quote from India's top policy group just captures that feeling perfectly. We were totally caught off guard, and it's a huge warning sign for what could come next. So let me introduce you to Disease X. It's what the WHO calls the next big one, the unknown threat. Now, just imagine for a second that Disease X isn't a virus we can make a vaccine for. Imagine it's a bacterium, one that has already learned how to defeat nearly all of our antibiotics. How do we treat that? How do we stop it? Now, the good news here is that we aren't just sitting around waiting for this to happen. The threat is massive, for sure, but the global response is starting to take shape. A really key part of this strategy is something called the One Health approach. The idea is simple, but it's really powerful. You just can't protect human health by itself. Why? Because these resistance genes don't care about species. They move from farms to rivers to people. So we have to think about the health of animals, plants, and our whole environment all at the same time. It's all connected. And this table gives you a little peek at what that kind of preparation looks like on the ground. This is India's proposed plan. And notice, it's not just about vaccines. It's about changing laws, building systems that can predict outbreaks, and, crucially, having the money ready to go before a crisis hits. A global war definitely needs a global strategy. But you know what? The most important battles are often fought at the local level by every single one of us. But here is a major roadblock. This chart, it's from a study in Nigeria, is just, wow, it's so eye-opening.
While almost 70% of healthcare workers know about antimicrobial resistance, less than 10% of the general public have even heard of it. How can we possibly fight a war if most people don't even know it's happening? This is the silent part of the silent pandemic.
So, what can we actually do about all this? Well, the good news is it starts with pretty simple stuff. First, just knowing this is a problem and talking about it. That's a huge step. Second, the basics still work best. Good old-fashioned soap and water is the most effective way to get all kinds of germs off your hands. Sanitizer is a good backup, sure, but it's not a replacement. And beyond that, we have to push for smarter policies, using antibiotics only when they're absolutely necessary, and working together as a planet on this, because it's a threat we all share.
Look, the superbugs are evolving, they're getting stronger, and they are spreading. This threat isn't some hypothetical thing that's years away. It's here, right now, and the alarm bells are getting louder. The only question left is, are we finally ready to hear them?